Hello and welcome in to a special Monday night edition of Between the Hedges. Thank y'all for tuning in this week. Even though we've been off schedule, we're hoping to get back on schedule this week. How are you doing tonight, Dad?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Two special time shows this weekend. So Saturday morning, Monday night, Friday night, Sunday night. Who's counting, right?
They're all just days at this point.
It doesn't matter when we do it, just as long as we do it, right?
Yes, sir. How's your Monday?
Not a bad Monday. Not a bad Monday. Can't complain.
Yeah,
How about
same.
you?
No, can't really complain. Didn't feel like much of a Monday because I got to miss a little bit of work. As you know, took my test this morning and got to stroll
And
in.
passed it with flying colors.
Yeah, well, that I pretty much expected, but yeah, it felt good and hard work paid off and got to miss work for a couple hours, so that was nice. But yeah, you know what week it is now?
It's officially Florida week.
Florida Hate Week. So
So
there's a
yeah,
little bit extra there. There's Florida Hate Week.
the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, and that's what it will forever be called from now through eternity.
Yeah, so I know we will do our preview show on Friday as regularly scheduled, so I don't really want to get much into that, but let's recap this weekend. I know we didn't have a Georgia game to go over, but we did have some picks and
Oh, you want to jump right into the revealing for the picks, huh?
or we just is there a specific game that you want to recap?
No, we might as well just go ahead and jump that on in. I know you're probably looking forward to it, aren't you?
Should I be?
Well, let's see. I'll share
Oh,
it. So, not as good a week for the Gaudry boys this week as it was the previous week. Um, as you can see, you went 1-5 again. I went 3-3. My even Steven 24-24 for the year now. And Matthew actually won the week 4-2, picking Vandy and Texas A&M. That was the difference. Vandy and Texas A&M. So now me and Matthew are both tied at 24 and 24.
yeah, and I'm just as far behind as I was a few weeks ago. So
I
it's
think you might be more. I think you might be more behind,
it
if
is
that's possible. Because I mean, you're gonna have a struggle getting back to 500. I mean, it's gonna take some amazing weeks for you to get back to 500 at this point. I mean, you'd
yeah,
have to win your next 14 picks straight.
and crazier things have happened, but the trend seems to be that the sub 500 weeks are my weeks. So that is all right. I still enjoy picking the games because
Oh, we still have a good time. It's all for fun, right? It's not like we're really winning anything, right?
right, but maybe we should change that.
Are you sure at this point you want to do that?
Well, maybe the three of us come together and come to a consensus, and maybe we all could win something together. I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, I guess getting into it, the first game on the list there is Texas A&M. They were favored by 2.5, and you and I both thought that LSU was gonna had turned a little bit of a corner there, and we're going to make it, let's just say, more interesting than what they did. Of course, Matthew went the other way and took Texas A&M, and he was right because Texas A&M totally ended up blowing them out in the second half and pulled away for the win.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed in a few teams, obviously this weekend, but uh, LSU probably, I would say probably the most. I think a lot of people expected LSU to continue the wave. I mean, even if you look at College Game Day, their picks, if you look at just anybody that was out there willing to give their 2 cents. I mean, yeah, there were Texas A&M people and people, less people I think that thought Texas A&M could win the game, even though it was a coin flip and at home for them. But LSU just looked crisp and they were on a roll and Texas A&M was winning some ugly close games against a little bit lesser competition, in my opinion. But yeah, they showed up and showed out, and they're almost a lock at this point to be in the SEC championship game now.
Well, if they keep playing like they are, yeah. And I tell you what, it's really setting up towards the end of the season, um, for that Texas A&M game to
That
be
might,
just be a mega game out there, and it's at Texas A&M if I'm not mistaken. So, um, yeah, that's setting up for it to be a huge game, not only for the SEC but for you know college football playoff rankings and all that stuff. So,
yeah, it'll probably determine which of those two teams goes to Atlanta, and then which one has a chance at a bye, and which one is looking at hosting or even going on the road potentially
right.
for their first playoff game.
But yeah, LSU let us down, me and you, that's for sure. They played well the first half, but first half, usually doesn't win a ball game. You got to play all four quarters at least.
Yeah, full 60.
So then we jumped on Kentucky and Auburn. Kentucky was favored. At this point, I'm like, why? And you and Matthew went with Kentucky. I took Auburn, and that was the sneaky good pick of the week right there, besides Vandy, I guess, for Matthew. But um, I, like I said in our previous show, for me, Kentucky they just seem lost right now. They're just a fragile team, and it's hard to uh, it's just hard to watch them. And as bad as Auburn's been playing, I knew they were due. I figured they would be due to actually sneak up and get one. And this seemed like as good a chance for them as any.
Yeah, and it may be the only one that they win the rest of the way. Who knows? But I know I feel more like, what am I trying to say? I feel stronger about Kentucky maybe not winning another game at this point than I do Auburn.
Whew. If that's the case, if they go 0 for the rest of the season, you can say bye-bye, Coach Stoops.
And the crazy thing was a lot of people in the offseason, or right as Nick Saban announced his retirement, were like, he should be a candidate, right? And to go from that being a candidate for Alabama to fired the next year when you finally get, a five-star quarterback, that's rough. But the
Yeah.
offense has looked even rougher than that scenario coming
Well,
true.
I think it was a little unreal. Looking back, I think it was a little unrealistic to expect Brock Vandegrift to perform with all the expectations that were put on him. Because let's be honest, he didn't get very much playing time when he was at Georgia. he's learning as he goes. And I mean, I'm not sure if he's still got one more year. I think he does of
Yeah.
eligibility. And to be honest, I think if he decides to stick with it and come back there and play again next year he probably will be the Brock Vandegrift that we were all expecting to show up this year because he will have a full season of experience under his belt at that point.
That's
And that makes
fair.
a difference. That makes a difference. I mean, honestly, when he was getting in the games, when he was still at Georgia, it was mop up duty time for all intents and purposes. I mean, and you know how Kirby gets when we got a big lead and we start throwing in the second, third string guys at the end of the, especially for the quarterbacks, all they do is just turn around and hand off the ball, turn around, hand off the ball, turn around, hand off the ball. There's not much
Or
mental
throw a bubble
acuity
screen.
needed. Yeah, it's not taxing. You're not getting real life live experience reps or anything. You're just milking clock and, you know, salting away the game basically.
Yeah, I mean, so it probably was unrealistic to expect Kentucky to compete this year, but early signs, early returns said they should have because they played Georgia toe to toe. They, uh, beat Ole Miss at Ole Miss. So you're like, okay, those are two of the better teams, two teams that were expected to be playoff locks, which we can get to Ole Miss in a minute. Um, you know,
Oops.
neither of those things. I mean, Georgia still is a playoff lock, but Ole Miss doesn't seem they got to win against Georgia to get in now. It feels like,
You
and
think they got to beat Georgia?
yeah, I don't know that a three-loss Ole Miss makes the cut. Not when they
Well,
lost to
I'll I
Kentucky.
will I will say this that a three-loss SEC team could get in the right situation. A lot you're putting your fate in a lot of other teams' hands, depending on what else happens, not only in the SEC but around the country, to determine whether or not a three-loss SEC team gets the nod over, another middle of the pack type team, that middle of their conference type, you know.
it it does matter who those losses are to, though, and that's kind of what might hurt Ole Miss. So, saying all that to say, you know, going back to Kentucky, you might be right. If Brock comes back and they get another year, who knows? Because Kentucky always plays very good defense, and that's stayed true. I mean, they held Auburn to 24, so you give your offense a shot keeping teams in the 20s these days. I mean, look at all these teams that lost, except for Missouri and Oklahoma and Auburn. These other scores were in the 20s. So it's like if you hold the other team to 20 something, you got a shot these days because most people are scoring 30, 40 plus. So anyway, yeah, I think I'm selling all my Kentucky stock that I had at the beginning of the season. I've been letting off some of it as we go, and yeah, definitely selling the rest of it now. You lose to Auburn, that's pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah, especially this season, the way Auburn has basically been a turnover factory and couldn't hang on to, couldn't finish any game at all.
Well, they looked just as bad on offense coming into this game too. So it was like it was a supposed to be a bad offense game, and I mean, 34 points scored is not a lot. So it really was, but
Yeah. Well, that okay. Well, that's a good wrap up on that game. It just sucked.
yeah, pretty much.
Then we go to our Texas at Vandy game. Texas favored by 18 and a half, and they win by Trey. Trey, 3 points.
Yeah,
Texas just couldn't get out of their own way, especially at the end of that game where they let Vandy claw back into it. There was a point in that game where it looked like they were headed towards covering it, but give Vandy credit, man. Vandy is just a different beast this year. They aren't going to be easy for anybody to go in there and win, especially or on the road even. I mean, um, overall they're 5-3, 2-2 in the conference. If they duplicate that again, I mean they'll end up 7-5 for the year. When's the last time Vandy won 7 games? And they'll be 500 in the conference. Um, but I mean, they just play tough, scrappy football. Um, Speaking of Auburn, that's where they go next. They
yeah,
go to Auburn,
and
and
the
then
way
they've
that,
got South Carolina coming to Nashville. Then they go to LSU, and they have Tennessee to finish off at home. So, I mean, I could see 2-2 out of that. I could see 2-2 out of that. They could
yeah,
surprise one of the big boys again, and I could see them beating Auburn. I could see them beating South Carolina. That would probably be a dang good game. But it's just so funny talking about them this year. That is totally opposite. I mean, a normal Vandy team, Texas goes in there and they probably win by 40 points.
yeah. Well, all the stock that I just sold in Kentucky, I'm putting it into Vandy because I love the way that Vandy plays. They just
Well, I tell you, the
never
whole key for
quit.
them is they've got to keep that dang quarterback healthy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if they lose him, it's over. I mean, even as rah-rah as you want to be about it and all that good stuff, he's their leader and he makes their engine roar. So if he's missing, it's just going to be way, way more difficult for them to, perform the way they have up to this point in the season.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, he's carrying that team in a lot of ways because yeah, like they're very gritty. They never quit. They're very disciplined and they play well together. But yeah, I mean, he steers that ship. But
And
good
it,
for
but
them.
yeah, the reason why I said that though, it seems like almost every other series you see him limping off the field going into the medical tent to get checked out for something. So I hope for their sake and because he's so fun to watch that he is able to stay healthy the rest of the season so they can, do as well as they possibly could.
But
Because
man,
without him, they're not going to be able to do that.
yeah, no, they won't. But hopefully they don't have to. We don't have to see that. But what I was about to say is, man, Texas almost let a disappointing loss at home, an embarrassment really at home to Georgia turn into two losses.
But well, I mean,
That's
yeah.
worth noting. I mean, yeah, good teams find a way to win. Great teams respond. And I don't feel like this was a response. Yeah, you can say, well, they won. They came out of there victorious. They've still only got the one loss. Okay, great, but that's a warning sign, like that's a okay, are they gonna be great or are they great now? I don't know. Um, They were great going into the Georgia game, but Georgia seems to have that effect on teams sometimes where kind of like Alabama used to, where it's like, oh, you think you're great? You think you're good? Bring it. And then we break teams. I mean, let's talk about Florida State. We completely broke that entire program. Like they are in shambles.
They are totally in shambles.
And
It's amazing to see the difference in the 2 years.
it's all because they were so pompous, so arrogant, made so many excuses, cried like babies when they didn't get in, and Georgia had every right to be just as pissed. But Georgia proved it on the field. And that's what
Well,
happens,
yeah.
and I just I'm not saying that
All
that's
those
going to be.
players quit on their team last year and they quit on that program and they're reaping the benefits of that if you ask me right now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I
And
know it's
I'm
harsh, but and everybody say, well, those guys were going pro and they were could have got injured. Well, yeah, we have plenty of guys playing that were going to the pros too, and they decided to stick it out. They were disappointed they didn't get a chance to defend their crown
a second time.
after losing one game in the SEC championship last year by 3 points. So, but they stuck it out and they said, you know what? We still got business to handle. One more game. And buddy, did they handle business?
Yes, they did. And I'm not trying to say, going back to Texas, that this is what Texas is going to have happen because I don't think Stark didn't build the foundation that way. It's been a lot of smoke and mirrors and like just a facade for Florida State. It was a one-hit wonder type thing because of how much turnover there is there with
Well,
the players.
they were heavy on the transfer portal. And again, this year they were. And this year, last year it clicked. This year it didn't. And I think the main reason the difference was the quarterback that they had last year. And the one they picked this year was a total bust. So that was the difference in the 2 years. Big time as far the main difference is how were they struck lightning in a bottle with the first guy, totally struck out with this guy, DJ, this year.
Yeah.
Then I guess this Alabama favored by 13 and a half over Missouri. And I guess you were thinking Missouri was gonna show up and play ball. Um, they did not, obviously, and their starting quarterback was injured. He didn't play much, and then, like I said in our preview when we made the picks, I didn't think he was going to play, and he didn't very long. And then the backup comes in and throws 3 or 4 interceptions, and that was ball game. Missouri just couldn't do anything, but I still, I still don't know if it's because Alabama's that good or Missouri's that bad, or maybe some mixture in the middle somewhat there, but 34 to nothing. I mean, Missouri got blanked, and I heard on the telecast how long it had been since they'd been shut out. And I can't remember exactly what they said, but it's been a while. Can't say that anymore, but it's been a while previous to this past weekend.
Yeah. Missouri, is no longer in contention because they just don't have the schedule to get them back in it. I think even if they ran the table, they would be a two-loss team that's left out of the playoff. Um, just because of how they look. They don't look good at all. And if they don't have their starting quarterback, they're not going to win out, first of all, but they're not the same team.
Yeah.
Um, that beat Ohio State at the end of the season and had a lot of expectations going in, returning a lot. I think the big difference for them, yeah, they've struggled on offense. Their quarterback was out, but they lost their defensive coordinator, and
You
he
know where he
made
is this year.
he made it. Hold on, he made it hell for everybody last year that they faced. So that kind of difference on defense, I think, is the difference in them being one of the top tier teams and what they are now, which is going to be somewhere in the middle. But where is he at?
He's now the defensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken, at Texas A&M.
Hmm.
Either that
See,
or Texas. I forget which, but I want to say it's Texas A&M.
which makes sense because Texas A&M just gets after people.
Yep.
So
Yep. But to your point about Missouri, their two big games so far this year, um, Texas A&M, they got crushed 41-10. And then they had Alabama. Now, granted, they were both on the road, 34-0. So a combined 75-10 in those two games.
yeah,
The only other game, I mean, and you're talking about a team that was lucky, I mean, very lucky to beat Vandy in overtime. If you remember that game, Vandy should have won that game, and Vandy would already be bowl eligible and have their sixth win. But Missouri was lucky and pulled that one out.
yeah,
But yeah, to finish up their schedule, their Oklahoma comes to Missouri to play. Then they're at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, and then have the season finale versus Arkansas at home. So you're right. They don't have any big dogs to, you know, sort of repair their image, so to speak.
no, I mean they could win all four of those games and be we will still think of them the same right now, or we should, because with all due respect to those four teams are not in contention either.
So
So
yeah, that's true. That is true. So I mean, it's hard to think of another team that's had a bigger letdown from preseason expectations than Missouri has this season. Maybe Oklahoma, maybe.
I would argue Alabama as well. I mean, preseason, I can pull up several guys on ESPN that picked them to win the SEC. And that looks like a long shot at this point.
So I guess if you're watching us now or whatever, give us your opinion. Who's the team so far this season that has not lived up to preseason expectations the most? What is your thought? Mine may be Missouri. Uh, I can see how you'd say Alabama too. That one definitely fits. Um, but yeah, that's interesting. So Alabama stomps them. Me and Matthew picked Alabama, even though they were. I think my quote was Saturday morning when we were doing this. I don't know if Alabama should be favored by 14, 13 and a half over anybody right now. Well, I guess Missouri was the correct answer. They should have been because they beat the absolute slop out of them. I mean, Missouri helped a good bit, let's be honest.
Yeah,
But
losing your starting quarterback and your backup throwing three picks, and I think they fumbled at a different point. Yeah, that helps. I mean, getting turnovers makes that score look a lot more lopsided, but yeah.
then moving on to the next game, that was probably the most surprising result that I saw this weekend when I saw that score for the first time. I was like, holy crap, what happened? Because I didn't get to watch any of it, as you know, I was traveling. So I didn't get to see it any of the actual game, but I saw the score and I was like 58-25. Good grief.
And
So Arkansas,
Mississippi State had to score late to make it 25. I
yeah.
mean, it
So
was
I
a
mean
30.
Arkansas was favored by a touchdown, but I mean they just opened a whole can. I mean, they took out some frustrations in that game Saturday. Um, 58-25. My gosh, just when you thought Mississippi State was starting to, play some decent ball, boy, they just got pummeled.
Well, to our credit, we did say, we felt like Arkansas would be able to move the ball at will because Mississippi State's defense is that bad. Well, I didn't think they were quite this bad. Maybe they had a bad day, but dang.
I mean, they almost dropped 60 on you. That's hard to do these days with the new clock rules.
That's very true. Because how many other games have we seen somebody score 50 points that it wasn't against, a cupcake?
Right.
And
Like
he,
Tennessee was doing it at the beginning of the season against nobody and stuff like that.
and they're
But I mean,
averaging
this is
like,
an SEC matchup,
yeah,
both these teams have decent athletes on their team. So to put that on another SEC school, that's just amazing.
yeah.
So we all went with Arkansas. We all thought they were going to outclass Mississippi State. We didn't expect that, but Lord, they outclassed Mississippi State. So we all won that game and picked it correctly. Then, dang Ole Miss. Dang Ole Miss. It's like Jekyll and Hyde with that team. It really is. Uh, credit to Oklahoma. They were scrappy. They made it a little difficult in an odd 26-14 final score that made it to where Ole Miss, who was the biggest favorite on our board to not this weekend, didn't even come close to covering that spread. So we all went for Ole Miss and we all took the L because of it.
Yeah, that was this was again another concerning performance from Ole Miss. Yeah, y'all probably will are yelling at me right now if you're watching. You're like, but Micah, they won by 12. Well, okay, you won by 12 against a team that has been anemic on offense, to say the least, and you yourself are supposed to be this high-powered, high-flying offense with this offensive mastermind and one of the best quarterbacks. Some people think he's the best in the SEC. I think that's debatable, but fair. And you managed 26 points at home. You struggled again with an inferior opponent. Um, yeah, the check engine light's been on for Ole Miss, and it's about to get checked into the shop, I think, to use that analogy, because they, yeah, I think they're living on the edge here. They're really close to it just blowing up on them.
Well, I mean, their loss, their losses are to Kentucky 20-17, and then to LSU 29-26. So both their losses are 3-point games where you were just scratching your head. How did they, especially to Kentucky? I couldn't believe Kentucky pulled it off, even though I think that week I picked them to cover. They were the underdog, and I picked them. But I still thought Ole Miss would win that game, and they didn't. Coming up next, they're at Arkansas. So that's not going to be easy. Then the following week, Georgia comes to town to play them at home. We know that's not going to be easy for them. Then they've got to go to Florida to play,
Which
and they
that's not looking as easy as it did a few weeks ago.
right, and Florida's playing better and better as the weeks go by. Now, granted, Florida's fixing to go through their own gauntlet starting this week.
Yeah.
The end of their season is just horrific. I mean, I don't know how they're going to win a game the rest of the season,
They'll beat Florida
but
State.
yeah, I guess that is their last game, isn't it?
They'll
So
kick the
that
crap
one,
out of Florida
but if
State.
Florida State had been the team that we all thought they were going to be this season, that would have been, you know, uh, a no go for them. But then they finish up, of course, with their in-state rival Mississippi State, and it's at Mississippi State. So, a pretty difficult end to their season, if you ask me. They're going to have to earn it if they're going to end up 10-2, which means they have to beat Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi State. They're going to have to earn it.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't either. I think they're at least going to be a three-loss team at the end of the season. 9-3, I think, is the best they could do.
And again, who you lose to matters. So I don't think that they'll be the three-loss SEC team that gets the nod to the playoff. I just don't. I think the home loss to Kentucky will will be their undoing.
And just like I mentioned this, I'll pull it up just to verify it. For Florida, they're finished this season. This week they got number 2 Georgia. Next week at number 6 Texas. Then they get a reprieve, play home against number 16 LSU. And then they get another home game. Lucky number 19 Ole Miss comes to town. And like you said, wrap it up at Florida State. So Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss. How many of those games, those 4 games, are they winning? Would you say, if you had to pick right now?
They probably will win one, but I could see them winning two.
You think Florida can win 2 of those games?
They they might could pull one out somewhere.
Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss. You think they can win 1 or 2 of those games?
They will win. They will beat Florida State.
I'm not concluding Florida State. I'm talking about the 4 SEC teams games they have left. Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss. And they're, let's see, it's neutral site gaming with Georgia, like it always is. They got to go to Texas, but then LSU and Ole Miss, they get at home.
Yeah, I don't see them beating any of the SEC schools.
That's what I'm saying. That's gonna be rough. I mean, right now they're sitting at 4-3 overall. They're staring at what would they be, 4-7 by the end of those 4 games? I mean, they could get to 5 wins with beating Florida State.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Wow. Okay. So as you can see, you went 1-5, I went 3-3, and Matthew went 4-2, the winner of the week. Me and Matthew lead the pace at 24-24, so nobody's making any money taking our picks. At best, they're breaking even.
Yeah, just I guess stay away from mine. That's the rule of this year.
All right, so let's talk rankings then.
This I feel much better about. This I feel like I'm spot on. Like tell me that I'm wrong.
I think I think you and Matthew both are light on Texas. I think
They
y'all are punishing Texas for losing to us way too much.
But
Um,
like I said
I
last week,
honestly think Texas might beat Oregon right now, but um,
I,
Texas I think would beat Ohio State. Definitely think they'd beat Miami and Penn State. So
yeah, but
um,
yeah, I probably would pick them against those three. I don't I don't think I'd pick them against Oregon.
I don't know if I'd pick them. It depends on how many points, but if you're talking straight up,
Yeah,
I
we're
think
just
that
talking.
depending on where it is, if it's at Texas, yeah, I think Texas could win. If it's at Oregon, yeah, probably lean towards Oregon.
No, but when we're gonna see this happen is in the playoff neutral site. So if you're asking me straight up, would I pick Texas over Oregon? No, I
In
wouldn't.
a neutral site, I probably would.
Mm.
I probably would. But yeah,
I'm
Texas
like,
A&M on our rankings evident was the big winner this week. Obviously, Matthew moved them up four. You moved them up three. I moved them up one. But of course, LSU drops out of all three of ours rankings after losing that game.
well, they've got to, right? At least for this week.
Yeah, and I mean, we've got a newcomer. Nobody's had them on their list up until this time. Matthew threw Indiana in at number 12.
I,
Um,
I strongly considered that because I did not want to put Notre Dame in my top 12, even though they embarrassed Navy. I just,
yeah, they really did. They took him to the woodshed.
but they're just that much better than Navy. I mean, Navy's
Yeah,
had a
but
great
Navy
start,
normally gives them fits, and this has been one of the better Navy teams since probably you've been alive.
but Navy had a lot of turnovers, so they helped them. And yeah, I'm with Matthew. I really considered Indiana. This is the best Indiana team since we've been
I'll be
alive.
honest. Yeah, on mine, it was between BYU and Indiana for me putting number 12. I was very close to putting Indiana instead of BYU there.
But see, we're all considering the same four teams in our from 10 to 12. Iowa State, BYU, Notre Dame, Indiana. And I think that's interesting, but that's probably, like I said, about right. I mean, Ohio State, Penn State play this weekend, so those are just placeholders. Whoever wins that game is going to stay in my top 10. Whoever loses that game is going out of my top 10. Just so you know.
Completely out of the top.
Out of the top 10, not 12. They may, depending on who it is, they may hold on. But yeah, the loser of that game to me loses a lot
It's
of,
interesting to me that me and you both have Ohio State ahead of Penn State, but Matthew has Penn State ahead of Ohio State.
well, the AP and coaches poll have what Matthew has. I just think Ohio State's better, and we'll
I
see
think their
this week.
roster is better. Yeah, I think their roster is better. The difference may be the quarterback.
Yeah, Penn
You know,
State's quarterback
if Penn
looks
State's
better.
quarterback was on Ohio State's team, they'd probably be the odds-on favorite to win the stinking national championship. But he's not. He's playing for Penn State. And are they playing this week?
Yeah,
I, I'd heard it on the radio today that he may not be playing. He may not be able to play, hurt his ankle or something
yeah, he got injured in the last game.
this past weekend. So that'll be huge if he cannot play in that game.
Oh, if he can't play in that game, they're not winning.
So
And then
I guess we got to keep an eye on that developing story for this week and see if he's healthy enough to give it a go.
yeah, I think Ohio State, Penn State has to be one of our six games this week. It's a top four matchup by the AP ranking, so
Yeah.
we've got to have
Yep.
that kind of a matchup. But yeah, for me, that's an eliminator almost in the Big Ten and in the playoff as well. Um, just don't fall asleep on Clemson. That's what I'm going to say
I,
about.
you're preaching to the choir. I'm the one that stuck with Clemson even after we beat the dog crap out of them.
Yeah. Well, and they're beating the dog crap out of people now. And I I got in trouble for this what, a couple of weeks ago, dog in Miami, but Miami better hope that Clemson gets beat by somebody else before they face them because I think Clemson will have enough on defense to keep Miami's offense down and they could pull out a win against them. So, yeah, Miami better hope that it's anybody but Clemson.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. I mean, because we all have Miami ahead of Clemson, but I think that's just simply due to the fact that they haven't lost yet.
Yeah, and they should have
If
lost
those
twice now, in my opinion.
and if the two of them match up in that ACC championship game, I'm gonna have a hard time not taking Clemson to win it. They
Yeah,
just seem like the more complete team to me. And it's making Georgia look really good every time they beat the slop out of another ACC school.
Georgia has the best resume in the country right now. Best two wins. The schedule, you were talking about how Florida ends the season, the gauntlet. Now, the way that the results are panning out, Georgia's schedule will end up being harder than Florida's this season. And if we go 11-1 with that schedule, that's insane.
Yeah. And we had a very, very good chance of being undefeated. I mean,
And we were one turnover away from being undefeated if that happens.
with a win at Alabama included in that
At night,
too.
the night that they introduced it as what is it? Did they introduce it as Nick Saban Field that night?
Yeah, I believe they did. I know he was there, but so it should be another fun weekend. We'll get together and get the games picked out for this upcoming weekend and you know, go from there and have our preview show Friday night, like you're saying.
Yeah, time to get back on schedule. Time to get Matthew back on here with us as well. Hopefully he can join us Friday and um yeah, we just got a little off kilter there, but that's fine. Like we started the show. Doesn't matter when, just that we just if, right? So,
Yeah, that's right.
well, I do appreciate the fact that even though we came on unexpectedly tonight, we still have had, a handful of viewers throughout the whole broadcast. So thank you all for watching this live, and if when you watch it in the future, thank you as well. Um, please keep sharing 5 or 10 of your friends. Give us a like if you like what we're doing. We want it to be a little more interactive. That's why we keep asking questions of you. Get in the chat. It makes it a little more fun. One of our best ones, we had a long chat. It's good to go back and forth with you guys. So we do like that. Let's see more of that. Definitely turn on notifications because, I mean, at this point, if you're the viewer, you don't know when we're going to be on here. So, um,
Well, it should be Friday night at 8 and Sunday night at 8. What it should be. That's what it has been until this week.
yeah. So I feel like we've done a good job of that. But you know, last last few days you could say, "Whoa, no, you haven't." So we promise we'll be on here Friday at 8. Um, and we do appreciate all your support. Keep giving us that. Thank you so much. It's been fun doing this season again. And everybody have a great Monday evening and happy Florida Hate Week. And as always, go
Go
dogs.
Dogs.